My child, listen closely. You were never meant to break in the storm. The storm came to show the world who you really are. They thought they could destroy you in silence, but I hid you there. They tried to attack your heart with lies, hoping you'd bleed out before you saw the truth. But I covered you. Every lie bounced off the armor I gave you, armor made from your pain, your patience, your tears, and your unshakable will to keep going. They weren't fighting you, child. They were fighting me. I was the one behind you all along. They saw your strength and misunderstood it. They thought they were coming against a person, but they came against a purpose. They didn't know they were at war with my will. And no one wins that battle. You already won. Yes, you did. I know your heart is still scanning the battlefield, waiting for the next attack, expecting more pain. But it's over now. The war is done. I declared the outcome already. You're still standing not because you're lucky, but because I never let you fall. You passed tests they never saw. You cried in silence. You questioned me in the dark. You begged me for answers, and I was right there, shaping your spirit in secret. They thought you were weak, but I was hiding you in plain sight. They laughed at your stillness, but your silence was a weapon. They couldn't see what I was building inside you. You were like a locked vault they couldn't open, sealed by my own hands. That's why they fear you now. That's why your presence makes them twitch. Your light exposes what's hiding in them. They can't understand how you keep rising without anyone lifting you up, but I've been the one lifting you all along. Being chosen is not a title I give because someone looks the part. It's not about being loud or flawless. I choose those who can survive fire and come out carrying glory. You walked through fire, and I lit your soul instead of letting it burn. You cried, but you didn't quit. You broke, but you kept walking. That's why I chose you. And now, your very existence brings discomfort to those who tried to destroy you. Your peace shakes their chaos. Your glow reflects the truth they're trying to hide from. That's why they talk. That's why they copy. That's why they try to become what you are, because deep down, they know they never could. So why do you still doubt yourself? Why are you questioning what I've already confirmed? Who told you that being still means you lost? Child, you're not frozen. You're just adjusting. Like nature rests after a storm, so do my chosen. That quietness you feel is not defeat. It's preparation. You're learning how to breathe in higher places now. You're adjusting to the weight of your crown. They laughed at you when you went silent, but now they don't know what to say. They underestimated your roots, but I let you bloom anyway. This is not revenge. This is revelation. This is not karma. This is clarity. You are seeing clearly now. And so are they. You didn't rise out of nowhere. You rose from everything they tried to bury you under. You rose from the ashes they danced on. They thought they were witnessing your end. But I was watching you reload. You were never the mistake. You were always the mission. While they were building their plans in public, I was building you in private. That's why your comeback confuses them. It doesn't look normal. It looks like a glitch to them. But I don't operate by their code. I'm rewriting your story in ways they can't predict. You are not one of them. You never were. That's why you couldn't blend in. That's why you felt strange around them. They wanted your light, but they couldn't handle the source. You were forged in storms they wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes in. And you came back, not just alive, but brighter, stronger, quieter, and heavier with my purpose. They thought your silence meant defeat. But it was strategy. They thought you were done, but you were just gathering fire. You didn't break. You broke through. And now, what they tried to destroy is rising right in front of their faces. They were measuring your coffin while you were building your throne. And now you're sitting in a place they said you'd never reach. You didn't just survive. You became the storm they feared. You didn't just win. You exposed what they tried to hide. Their lies, their mocking, their doubts, they're all silent now. Because truth has a sound that can't be ignored. You were never outnumbered. You were hidden. I covered you in the dark. I shielded you while they watched and laughed. And now, I'm revealing what I've been preparing all along. And it's too late for them to stop it. They see it now. They can't unsee it. You became the very storm they thought would destroy you. They mocked your pain, but your pain became your power. They celebrated your silence, but your silence is now your sound. Some of you still walk like the win isn't real. Like you're waiting for them to approve what I've already sealed. Stop waiting. The verdict is in. You already won. I don't unwrite victory. I stamp it. Your doubts are not humility. They're disrespectful to what I've done in you. Stop acting like you got lucky. You didn't get lucky. You got a line. They were trying to edit your story, but I was carving it in stone. They're scared of what you carry. Not just your glow, but your ability to endure. Your ability to suffer in silence and rise without needing a stage. They keep copying you, but they can't become you. The script wasn't written for them. They played with fire, thinking it was a joke. Not knowing you were the fire all along. They threw matches, and you came out with a flame in your eyes. Walk like it's already yours, because it is. Speak like you've already won, because you did. And if they're still watching, let them. Let every step you take be a sermon to their souls. Let your walk preach what their mouths never could. When you stopped clapping for them, they heard thunder. When you stopped waiting for their approval, that's when I started echoing your name in rooms they'll never step in. They wanted you begging, starving for their attention. But you grew up. You realized you didn't need their hand claps or their praise. You outgrew that hunger. And when you did, everything changed. Not because you finally got noticed, but because you realized you were never meant to be noticed by them in the first place. You didn't win because they cheered. You won because you stopped needing it. That was the shift. That's when the ground beneath you started shaking. You took their opinion off your throne, and suddenly, your power had no leash. You weren't built to be clapped for. You were built to shift the room just by walking in it. I didn't choose you for decoration. I chose you to shake the system. That's why they're quiet now. That's why your silence is louder than their noise. That's why they scroll past your success like their screen glitched. That's why they whisper about your rise but can't stop taking notes. They don't want to admit it, but your very presence is a problem to their pride. You didn't win in spite of their silence. You won because of it. Their silence was your soil. Their doubt was your fertilizer. While they ignored you, I was preparing you. And now that you're here, they want to pretend they were part of it. Let them pretend. Let them wrestle with the truth. You moved in silence not because you were unsure, but because your victory was never meant to be a performance. You were the stage. Every step you took lit the way for someone else. And you never asked for applause. That's why you're dangerous. That's why they can't handle your name. You don't need an audience to live. You don't need a stage to shine. You didn't wait for the world to tell you it was okay to rise. You rose anyway. And that's what they can't understand. That's what they can't copy. You learned how to clap for yourself. And when you did, I moved with you. Because heaven responds to the ones who walk without applause. The ones who build in the silence. The ones who stay faithful even when the room is empty. You were never chasing the spotlight. You are the light. You didn't ask to be chosen. You were shaped for it. That's why your glow burned through the fog they tried to trap you in. That's why your stillness made more noise than their screams. Your presence didn't need marketing. It was magnetic. Because it was real. You were not made for approval. You were made for truth. So stop explaining yourself. Stop dimming yourself to make them feel comfortable. You weren't created to be small. You were created to be seen. To be felt. To be a living reminder that I still choose, still protect, still elevate. And child, I didn't bring you this far to leave you now. So stand up, wipe your tears, square your shoulders, and walk in what I already gave you. You don't need their hand to step into your purpose. You only need mine, and I'm already holding you. I saw everything, every step you took when no one believed in you. I watched you build with bleeding hands, using pain as your material. I saw how you rose up even when they ignored you. I saw you climb even while they laughed. I saw how you kept going even when they shut doors, even when they withheld their support, even when they stayed silent on purpose, hoping you would give up. But you didn't. You kept walking. You kept believing. You kept rising. And now that you've arrived, now that you're standing tall, they want to ask how you did it. But they never once asked why you had to. Because if they asked why, they would have to admit what they did. They would have to admit the parts they played, the doors they closed, the hands they didn't lend, the cold silence they turned into a weapon. But nothing they did could stop what I placed inside you. Nothing they withheld could kill what I was growing in you. You learned how to become great without being seen. You became strong in the dark. You grew in the hidden places. And when you finally bloomed, it was too late for them to stop it. Too late for them to twist it. Too late for them to pretend they helped you build it. They didn't build this. I did, with you. I saw the nights you clapped for yourself in the dark when no one else clapped. I heard the tears you cried in silence when no one even noticed your pain. Every time you stood up when no one was watching, I saw it. Every time you celebrated a small win like it was huge, I took note. Heaven wrote it down. And now, the script has flipped. The ones who ignored you are watching from the sidelines, and you are center stage, not for fame, but for truth. You became the headline, and they became the footnote. And yet, some of you still look around for approval. Still wait for someone to say, "Well done," before you believe in your own greatness. Stop that. That's not humility, that's disrespect to the battles you survived. That's dishonor to the strength I placed inside you. You didn't walk through all that pain just to sit around waiting for someone else to clap. The moment you stopped waiting for their applause, that's when you became unstoppable. That was the moment of your resurrection. And now that it's done, they can't undo it. So wear your silence like armor. Walk through their shadows like their smoke. They built their platform with noise, but you built your kingdom with silence. And now, just your presence is enough. You don't even need to speak. Your very being is confirmation. That thunder they hear in the background, that's just you walking. They tried to trap you in a game that you broke just by refusing to play it. They expected you to play along so they could trip you. But you stepped off the track. You left the race. And now, they don't know what to do without you on the board. You didn't win because you worked harder in their system. You won because you refused to get dirty. You saw what it was, a fake kingdom dressed up like power. And you walked away. You didn't try to fit in with the clowns. You built your own arena. You didn't follow their script. You wrote your own. Now they're confused. They're looking around, trying to figure out who to copy, because their identity was built on trying to outshine you. But you didn't just walk away. You rose above the entire game. You didn't try to beat them, you dismantled the whole thing. They couldn't defeat you, so they tried to drag you into their mess. They wanted you to get angry, emotional, reactive. But you didn't. You stayed calm. You stayed still. And that shook them more than any fight ever could. Real power doesn't scream. It moves in silence. While they were busy chasing applause, you were chasing alignment. While they were playing king of the hill on a pile of lies, you were building your foundation on truth. You refused to sell your soul just to be seen. And that's what makes you different. That's what makes you chosen. They trade truth for likes. You stayed pure. They sold their light for attention. You kept your spirit clean. They're trying to understand how you're still rising, even though you never played by their rules. But I'll tell you why. Because I never bless corruption. What looks like success to the world is often a setup for collapse. They can't fake greatness forever. And when their towers fall, the truth will rise, and it won't knock. It will flood. You didn't get stuck in the drama. You chose peace. You chose elevation. And they hated you for it. People who feed off chaos can't survive around calm. You didn't lose anything by walking away from their games. That's when you gained everything. You were never built for shallow battles. You were made for deep revolutions. Quiet ones. Deep ones. The kind that don't ask for permission. That's why the rules bent for you. That's why the walls didn't break you. You refused to beg for crumbs at a table I always meant for you to own. And yes, they noticed. They watched you rise with no sponsors. They saw you win without applause. They heard you speak truth with no script. You moved through a system designed to destroy, and you didn't just survive, you walked out with your crown still on. That kind of power can't be taught. It can't be copied. It is chosen asterisk. And still, some of you sit wondering why they won't accept you. But listen to me, rejection from the corrupt is confirmation of your calling. If they're uncomfortable around you, you're probably doing it right. You weren't made to fit in. You were made to stand out. And sometimes, standing out means standing alone. You were never meant for the crowd. You were meant for the narrow road. You broke their mold. You shifted the entire atmosphere just by existing. You didn't compete, you disrupted. You made their illusions crash just by walking in the room. So don't let their confusion pull you down. Stay above it. They can't reach you if you don't come down. Stay elevated. Stay untouchable. Stay chosen. Because while they were chasing attention, you became the glitch that broke the whole system. And now, they're following your path, even if they'll never admit it. They bet everything on the ghost of who you used to be. But you already buried that version. They kept throwing dirt on your name, but they didn't know you already had the funeral. They thought your past would trap you. That your mistakes would hold you down. That your pain had a time limit. They bet on your brokenness. But here's what they missed. You didn't just grow. You disappeared. You let that old version die in silence. You didn't make a speech. You didn't need anyone's permission. You just let the old you go. And when they came looking for the you that needed approval, the you that stayed small, the you that dimmed your light just to survive, they found nothing but silence. Because that you doesn't live here anymore. That was your real victory, not just growth, but a rebirth. They remembered your weaknesses. They clung to your old patterns. But chosen ones don't stay in circles. They rise. They evolve. They ascend asterisk. You weren't stuck. You were cocooning. And now, you've emerged. Unrecognizable, untouchable, unstoppable. They tried to drag you back with your past. But you didn't respond. You didn't defend yourself. You let them talk while you wrote a new future. They tried to resurrect the old you, but they couldn't. Because that version was already dead and buried. The one who tolerated disrespect, the one who apologized for existing, the one who made herself small, that version is gone. And the most beautiful part, you didn't even hold a service. You outgrew your old shell with no warning, no announcement, no goodbye, and now, they don't know what to do. Because everything they planned was based on the old you. But that person isn't here anymore. I made you new. You didn't just survive, you transformed. And that transformation didn't need to be loud. It didn't need to be explained. It was between you and me. You didn't ask the world to validate it. You didn't wait for applause. You just kept walking, quietly, boldly, faithfully. And now, you're here. So let me be the one to say it, well done. You didn't fold. You didn't break. You didn't lose yourself. And now, it's your time. Walk like you carry heaven in your bones. Because you do. Speak only when needed. Your presence speaks louder than words. You don't owe them explanations. You don't owe the past a comeback. Keep rising. Keep shining. Keep being chosen. Because what I placed in you, no one can take. What I grew in you, no one can claim. And what I prepared for you, no one else can walk in. You are my chosen one. And nothing can change that. But the trap never worked. Because I, the Lord your God, taught you how to see without looking, how to hear without reacting, how to discern without speaking. I taught you how to walk in power without needing to prove a single thing. You didn't fall for the bait because I removed the need to be understood. I took away your appetite for revenge. I replaced it with clarity. I gave you eyes that could see through intentions. I gave you peace that doesn't beg to be protected. That's what they didn't expect. They thought you'd lose your fire when they left. But they didn't realize I was the one who lit it in the first place. You see, when you were crying in silence, I was there. When they laughed at your pain, I was building power in your spirit. They couldn't see it because they were looking for a version of you that doesn't exist anymore. They were watching for weakness while I was pouring strength into the parts of you they never valued. You stopped shrinking, not because of pride, but because I finally showed you who you are in me. You began to carry yourself like the storm you survived because I made you one. You walk differently now because your feet have touched fire and didn't burn. You speak differently now because your words carry authority, not apology. That's the thing about my chosen ones. When you're reborn in me, you don't announce it with noise. You announce it by no longer fitting the pain you once wore. You don't beg to be understood. You don't try to convince them you've changed. You just change. Quietly. Fully. Righteously. They can dig through your past all they want. Let them. While they're busy playing archaeologist with your ashes, you're out here walking in your upgrade. They're trying to resurrect an old version of you I buried. They're trying to hold on to memories I already redeemed. They think they know you, but they don't even know who you've become. That's why they can't touch you. Not because you're hiding, but because I elevated you beyond their reach. Your silence is not guilt. It is graduation. You didn't just walk away from the past. You lit the bridge on fire and planted life on the ashes. You didn't try to rebuild what was broken. You built something entirely new. Now when they throw your name around like they still have access to you, they're only revealing how outdated their knowledge is. They're talking about a version of you that I've transformed. A version that doesn't live here anymore. You were never meant to live in that old identity. You were never meant to carry your wounds like a name tag. When I pulled you into isolation, it wasn't to punish you. It was to remake you. I wasn't destroying you. I was recoding you. I was rewriting your story, redefining your patterns, rerouting your destiny. That silence, that loneliness, it was the furnace where I forged your new foundation. So stop thinking you owe anyone an explanation for how much you've changed. You don't. My chosen don't make announcements. They become the evidence. They don't shout about their elevation. They simply live it. Don't you dare feel guilty for outgrowing people who only knew how to connect with your brokenness. You are not required to remain in pain just to make others feel safe. You're not responsible for their refusal to adapt to your healing. You were never going to stay in that place of suffering just to keep them comfortable. They were hoping you'd remain in the same cycle. They never prepared for you to rise. They were betting on your silence, but you chose your voice. They were counting on your pain, but you chose your power. They tried to limit you, but I called you to freedom. And now, you owe nothing to the story they wrote about you without your consent. Let them keep reading that expired script. You've moved on to a new chapter they don't even have the language for. And this time, you're not just in the story. You're the author, the editor, and the headline. You didn't just break generational curses. You transformed them into warning signs. What they meant to use against you only ended up signing their name to the very lesson that I used to lift you. Don't get it confused, this wasn't just your battle. This was centuries in the making. You weren't just facing your own trauma. You were standing in a battlefield covered with the wounds, the fears, and the debts of generations. I built you for it. I shaped you in the dark. And when the time came to confront the things others were too afraid to face, you didn't run. You didn't flinch. You stood still, and the curse blinked first. They underestimated you because they were focused on your surface. They didn't know your soul had been trained by me to destroy patterns that didn't even have names. You weren't just healing, you were reprogramming reality. The pain that ran in your bloodline came charging at you. And it lost. For the first time in generations, it lost. You were the wall. You were the line in the sand. You were the no more. That's why it felt so heavy. That's why the warfare was relentless. You weren't just dragging your own healing, you were dragging the silence of every ancestor who never had a voice. You were dragging the weight of every curse that never met resistance, until you. And yes, they came for you. The ones who thrived in dysfunction. The ones who wore their curses like comfort. They came for you because your freedom made them feel exposed. Your peace made them question their chaos. Your growth made them uncomfortable in their stagnation. And they hated you for it. Not because you wronged them, but because you made them look at the truth. You made their demons tremble. You didn't back down. You took every lie passed down like scripture and shattered it. You rewrote the bloodline. You reclaimed what was buried. You built peace where there used to be patterns of pain. That's why they fear your name now. Because you survived what they hoped would destroy you. And not only did you survive, you turned the fire into your crown. The same flames meant to break you now rest on your head like glory. You came out of generational hell carrying divine wisdom. You didn't just escape trauma, you dismantled its throne. You walked through locked doors, healed wounds that didn't even belong to you, and cried tears for people you never met but who live inside your DNA. You screamed truth in places where only whispers ever existed. You chose me over tradition. You chose love over loyalty to pain. That's what makes you dangerous. Not your anger, but your healing. Not your volume, but your clarity. You didn't just walk away from the curse. You turned around and dared it to try again. And when it did, it shattered. Because my chosen don't retreat.